Hello, welcome back to Seconds with Silk. I'm John Silkauskas, and I'm so glad you tuned in today. Today we have a special treat. I have a great friend with me named Ryan Daulton, and Ryan I've asked to share with us about truth. I once heard this message that he presented on truth, and I thought it was absolutely phenomenal, and so I wanted you to hear it. And so, Ryan, I'm just going to start off by asking, what is truth?
Well, if you look at the definition of truth, nowhere in any definition that you'll find does it say that truth is opinion or truth is relative to a certain person or individual, but it is always absolute, and it is always a fact, and it is always reality. It's actuality. And so truth, without it, there can be really no progress in life. And so just like any everyday, ordinary thing that we go through, just like mathematics, for example, 2 plus 2 will always equal 4, and there's no way that you can make it equal anything else. And so even in things like cars, for example, there's many working components in a vehicle, and if one thing were offset or wrong, it may not get you from point A to point B, but cars, as we know, are always being expounded upon. And so the idea never changes, it only ever gets better. And so it has to all work together and not contradict itself in order to be beneficial.
Okay. So if truth is absolute, then answer this, is it relative?
No. Truth, for example, I'll quote Lecrae in a rap that he said, "What if my truth says your truth is a lie? Is it still truth?" And vice versa. You see, truth, it has to be consistent in order to even be a functioning word. And so if my truth says your truth is a lie, that means our truths contradict each other, and they butt heads, they don't work. But in order for truth to be truth, it can suffer no contradiction. It can't fall in on itself. And so truth, a lot of people think it's led by feelings and led by what they want to think. But the reality is, truth is not something that originates in our feelings or what our opinion of it is, because in the definition of truth, it does not involve the word opinion.
Okay. So you're saying truth is not relative, which I agree with. But if we can't look inside ourselves to find truth, how do we find truth? How do we discover it?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I had mentioned before, truth is something that it doesn't originate in us. And so truth is out there. It's always been something that's able to be found. And just as an example, like the ocean is something that we don't know a lot about. We always search into it and we learn about it, but there's things down in the ocean that we've never discovered before, and we will maybe one day, but there are things in there right now that we do not know. And so in the same way, truth is something that can be found, but you have to seek it. And so that is how you learn truth, is that you don't just look to yourself, because you didn't create the world. You didn't create the way it works and the way it moves. And so how could you look to yourself for truth when you weren't the creator of anything, basically? So it needs to be sought out.
Okay. So if indeed we need to discover or learn truth, let me ask this. What truths are relevant enough that we need to discover, that are important for us to know?
Mm-hmm. Well, just like I had talked about the ocean, obviously there are things we haven't discovered yet about it. But at the same time, my life is not going to be changed because somebody found some new species of seaweed. And so, the reality is some truths are relevant, they change us, and other truths, you could learn, but you could have lived your life the same way having known that or not known that. And so really the only thing that gives truth any relevance is God. You see, God is, the creator of all things. And since he's the creator of all things, he is the one who knows best where we should direct our lives and how we should live. So hypothetically speaking, let's just say there is no God. And if there is no God, then we're going to live, here we are right now, we're going to die, and it's not going to matter. I could become the most rich and famous person in the world. You could be a homeless man and, live to the ripe old age of 32 and die, But when we die, it will be no different. So you see, though that in that life there may be truth, it's not relevant. But in a life with God, that is the only time that truth is actually relevant, because that is the type of truth that changes you. The type of truth that validates a purpose in you and brings you into a better place is truth that is relevant. That's the type of truth that God wants us to learn. Pontius Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?" And I think more people need to ask that question because we take it for granted. That is a very important question. And Jesus, in an earlier statement of the book of John, he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." See, Jesus didn't just say, "I know the way." He didn't just say, "I know truth," and he didn't just say, I know life-promoting activities. He said, "I am," very intentionally. And so Jesus is the only personal example of truth that you can have a relationship with. Math is truth, but I can't have a relationship with math as far as having an intimate relationship with it. Gravity is truth, but I can't have a relationship with gravity outside of tripping on my shoelaces and smacking my face against the concrete. But Jesus is truth, and I can have a relationship with him. And so he creates relevant truth because he is relevant. He's completely relevant to everyone.
That's good. So I like that aspect that you shared in regards to Jesus is the only truth that we can have a relationship with, because he's a person, but he's also truth.
Yeah.
So if indeed truth is something that we discover, and that it's very relevant in the fact that God is real, and that truth is something that we need to discover in regards to God being real and Jesus being truth, how do we discover God? How do we know truth in Jesus?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when somebody hears truth, it's something. It really depends. There's three things that truth can do to you once you hear it. One, it'll either humble you. Two, you won't care about it at all, and you'll just forget about it, and you'll move on. Or three, it will offend you. And oftentimes people who hear truth, and if they're choosing to live a lie, it offends them. But really, the good result that brings you into that relationship, into that understanding, is when it humbles you. When you learn about the truth of who we are, how God sees us, and how we should see ourselves in light of God. And when that happens, humility starts to set in. And out of that place of humility, God gives grace to the humble, but he refuses the proud. And so he's going to give that grace to you. And then you'll find that you're starting to get to know him more and more. And so I really think that anybody can hear truth, but only the humble are going to really receive what truth is trying to say. So through humility, I think it's going to be found.
And I think that's great, because there's one thing you just said, that if someone is believing a lie and likes the lie that they're believing, when they hear the truth, they're going to be offended.
Yes.
Versus humility is an opportunity to grow. If you suddenly decide that I'm no longer teachable, like I know it all, you're not going to learn anything, Mm-hmm. So there's an element of humility just to learn, basic truths that can help in life, but especially about the truth of who God is and what that means for us. So great. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment with Ryan Daulton, and really defining and discovering what truth is. And I just hope that you grow in humility and you grow in truth. Jesus, like Ryan said, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus also said in John chapter 8 that it is through his truth that we are made free. And we're made free from the lies that we might believe. We're made free from deception. And we're made free to live and discover who we really are and why we're really here on this earth. So be encouraged, and hopefully you were edified and learned something through this segment. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.